All right, I want you to just close your eyes for a second. Imagine the thickest, heaviest, most oppressive heat you can. You know that kind of summer night?
Oh, yeah, where the air just feels thick, like you could swim in it?
Exactly, thick, like a wet wool blanket just draped over everything. It's sticking to your skin, it's weighing down your chest, and every single movement feels like a huge effort.
The kind of weather where the air conditioner, if you're even lucky enough to have one, it's losing the battle.
It's completely given up. Now, I want you to transport yourself back. It's
Mhm.
Wednesday, August 4th, 1965.
Mm-hmm.
It's 9:00 p.m. We're in Elmira, New York, in the living room of Jane Roberts and her husband, Robert Butts.
And they are just wiped.
Completely wiped out, just exhausted. And they think, it's just this brutal humidity making them feel like zombies.
Which is a totally normal assumption to make.
Of course.
Yep.
And as we're about to find out, the local weather report might be missing a very crucial and totally invisible variable.
It sets such a specific mood, doesn't it? Usually, when we talk about consciousness research or channeling, people picture these candlelit rooms, maybe some incense, a very mystical, quiet vibe.
Right, very serene.
But here it's just sweat, fatigue, and this very practical determination to just get the job done, even though the atmosphere itself is fighting them.
And that is exactly where we're starting today. We are taking a deep dive into session 175 of the Seth Material.
A really fascinating one.
Yeah, and we're looking specifically at the transcript recorded in the early sessions, Book 4, which is published by the New Awareness Network.
And this session, I mean, it really is a gold mine. It kicks off with the weather, but it spirals into this incredibly technical breakdown of how consciousness actually focuses and why we get, bat reception with psychic information. And then it ends with, one of the most bizarre physical sensations Rob ever recorded in his notes.
Oh, we are definitely getting to the baseball glove hands a little later. It's genuinely weird.
It's so strange.
But before we get into all that weirdness, we do have to cover the basics, just so everyone's on the same page.
The disclaimer.
The mandatory disclaimer. This podcast will be distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes. We're here to, explore the text, analyze the mechanics, and really see what we can learn about our own minds.
And we should probably mention, if you want to follow along with the source material or dig a little deeper, it's all available directly from the publisher. You can find the early sessions, Book 4, and really all the other books at sethcenter.com/the early sessions.
Okay. Housekeeping is done. Let's get back to that hot, sticky living room. So Jane and Rob are sitting there. They are just drained.
I almost called it off.
They almost did. They almost didn't even have the session.
Yeah.
But they decide, all right, let's push through. Jane goes into trance. Seth comes through. And immediately, right out of the gate, he addresses the elephant in the room.
He addresses the fatigue, but he reframes it, which is so interesting. Jane and Rob are blaming the heat, the humidity. And Seth basically says, yes, the weather is part of it, but not in the way you think. He suggests there's a psychic effect to the weather that's actually causing the drain.
See, that's the first hook for me, because we all talk about, seasonal affective disorder or feeling kind of gloomy when it rains for days. But Seth seems to be talking about something, more tangible here, isn't he?
He is. He's suggesting that the atmosphere isn't just air and water vapor. It's an electromagnetic medium. And sometimes that medium itself creates a kind of resistance.
Resistance.
Yeah. He's implying that what Jane and Rug are feeling, that physical heaviness, is actually a form of psychic static or insulation.
So it's not just that their bodies are hot. It's that their consciousness is trying to push through a really dense fog.
It's like trying to run underwater.
That's a great analogy. Yeah. And despite this, underwater feeling, Seth decides to launch right into a very complex theoretical discussion.
Of all things.
Right. He wants to talk about how we perceive reality. And he starts with a concept that I think is, it's the key to understanding the entire Seth philosophy.
The idea of focus.
Exactly. Focus. So let's unpack this. Because when I hear focus, my mind immediately goes to, concentrating on a spreadsheet for work or focusing a camera lens. Is that how Seth is using the word here?
It's actually very close to the camera lens analogy. In fact, he uses that kind of comparison himself.
Yeah.
But he starts with a premise that really challenges how we usually see ourselves.
Okay.
He says, and I'm paraphrasing a bit here, we do not change our consciousness. We change the direction in which it is focused.
Hold on. Say that again. That's a big statement. We do not change our consciousness.
It's huge.
Because I feel like I change all the time. My consciousness when I'm awake feels totally different from my consciousness when I'm dreaming or, in a deep meditation.
It feels like I have changed.
And Seth would argue that that feeling is an illusion.
Okay, think of it this way. Imagine you're holding a really powerful flashlight in a pitch black room.
Okay.
That flashlight.
Yeah.
That's your consciousness. It is a specific brightness, a specific kind of battery. That part doesn't change. Now, shine that flashlight on a wall that's covered in really chaotic, angry graffiti.
All right, I'm seeing the graffiti.
Now, whip the flashlight around and shine it on a painting of a calm blue ocean.
Okay.
The content of what you're seeing has changed completely, right?
Yeah.
Your emotional reaction to it has changed. You might feel agitated by the graffiti and peaceful looking at the ocean.
Right.
But the flashlight hasn't changed at all. It just pointed in a different direction.
So Seth is saying that the core observer is constant. We scroll through different channels of reality.
Precisely. And in this session, he breaks down how we scroll. He actually distinguishes between two types of these focus shifts. He calls them surface change and depth change.
Okay, surface change seems pretty self-explanatory. Is that the flashlight just moving along the same wall?
It's exactly right. Surface change is what we do all day, every day in physical reality. You look at your computer, then you look at your coffee cup, then you glance out the window.
You're shifting your attention.
You're shifting your attention, but you're staying within the same dimension. You're just panning the camera across the physical landscape.
Okay, simple enough. So then, what is a depth change?
A depth change is when you stop panning left and right and you turn the focus dial inward. Or, to use a different analogy, it's when you stop changing the song on the radio and you switch the frequency band entirely.
From FM to AM.
From FM to AM or to shortwave or something else altogether. A depth change is when you move your focus from physical reality into other realities.
And the main example he gives here for that is the dream state.
Yes. And this is where the real mission of this deep dive starts to come into focus. We tend to think of dreams as these fuzzy, hallucinatory things that happen inside our heads while we're asleep.
Yeah, like a movie my brain makes.
Right. But Seth is arguing that dreams are valid, objective realities that we visit by performing a depth change in our focus.
He makes a really interesting point about why we do this mostly when we sleep, and it's just brutally practical. He says essentially we do it at night because we don't have to worry about getting hit by a truck.
It's true. That's basically the gist of it. He says survival necessities have usually been satisfied. It's a mechanism of pure biological safety.
Right.
I mean, think about it. If you were walking down a busy street in New York City and you suddenly performed a massive depth change, just turned your focus entirely away from the physical world and into a vivid dream landscape, what happens?
I walk straight into a manhole, or I get run over by a taxi, instantly.
Exactly. Your physical senses are your collision detection system. They are hardwired to keep that flashlight pointed at the physical world while you are up and moving around. It's to keep the organism alive.
So waking consciousness is basically a safety lock on the focus dial.
That's a perfect way to put it. It's a safety lock.
When we sleep.
When we sleep, the body is safe. It's in bed. The muscles are mostly paralyzed. The survival needs are met. So consciousness says, okay, the vehicle is parked. I can now unhook the lens and point it somewhere else entirely.
There's a quote in this session that I highlighted because it just flipped my whole perspective on dreaming.
What is it?
He says, in your dreaming existence, your physical environment is replaced by your dream environment. You react to whichever one you are concentrated in.
The word replaced is the kicker there.
It is.
It implies that for the observer, for you, the physical world literally ceases to exist for that time. It's not just hovering in the background, it's gone. The dream becomes your total reality.
It makes you wonder if we could learn to do that depth change while awake, but without, losing that safety lock. Isn't that basically what meditation is, or what a trance is?
That is exactly what Jane Roberts is doing in this very session. She's sitting in a chair, she's physically awake, but she has learned to perform a partial depth change.
She's turned the dial.
She's turned the focus dial just enough to tune into Seth, while still keeping enough focus on the physical room to actually speak the words out loud.
But on this particular night, that dial it's sticky. The signal is just bad.
The poor connection. Which brings us all the way back to the atmosphere.
It is almost funny, isn't it, to hear a disembodied, multidimensional entity complain about bad reception.
It really is.
At one point, Seth actually cuts the session short because of it. He blames electromagnetic disturbances.
It grounds the phenomenon, it
Yeah.
moves it away from this idea of pure magic and more into a realm of, well, physics we just don't understand yet.
Huh.
He describes these disturbances as being cyclic. He calls them insulation.
Insulation is such a great word for it. It really implies a barrier.
It does. And he makes a point to emphasize, and this is really important for Jane's confidence at the time, that it's not her fault. It's not Rob's fault. It's the environment.
It's the static on the line.
Yeah, imagine trying to have a very important conversation across a canyon during a massive windstorm. The words would just get snatched away.
But here's where it gets, well, kind of chilling. It's not just the communication that suffers from this. Seth drops this little bomb into the conversation. He says, "Your green plants are affected when the conditions prevail."
That detail always stops me in my tracks.
Thank you.
It suggests that this psychic weather isn't just a mental thing. It physically interacts with biology.
Yeah.
If the electromagnetic conditions are insulating, as he says, it implies that the life force, or, whatever bioelectrical signal a plant relies on, is being dampened.
So the plants literally droop. They struggle to get the signal.
And it's not just plants.
The baby.
The neighbor's baby.
Jane brings this up. She mentions that the baby who lives downstairs has been just crying its eyes out lately, especially at night. And she asks Seth, is this related? And Seth's answer is just, the child is also affected.
Just think about the implications of that for a second. We look at a crying baby, and our checklist is hungry, tired, wet diaper, maybe teething.
Right, the usual suspects.
Seth is adding a fifth category to that list: atmospheric psychic pressure.
It makes a weird kind of sense, though. Babies are. They're just raw. They haven't built up that focus lock that adults have. They are wide open to everything.
They are. Their flashlight is just swinging around wildly.
Yeah.
So if a massive low-pressure front of this psychic static rolls through the neighborhood,
the baby's going to feel it first.
absolutely.
Yeah.
They don't have the developed ego barriers to block it out. They just feel the pressure, this discomfort, this static in their own tiny nervous system, and they react.
It gives a whole new meaning to the phrase, "there's something in the air."
It really does. It suggests we're all part of this vast, connected ecosystem of consciousness. And when the psychic weather is bad, everybody gets a little bit wet.
So despite this terrible connection, Seth is basically on one bar of service here. He decides to try an experiment.
He does.
He says, "I'm going to try to transmit some data from a remote location." This is the remote viewing part of the session.
And you can notice the shift in his delivery here. Usually, Seth is very conversational, very flowing. Here, he switches to almost a bulleted list. He's just punching specific hard images through the static.
He's looking at a scene, and it involves a man he names as Dr. Instream. Now, do we know who Dr. Instream is?
In the context of the early sessions, there were often people that Rob and Jane knew or were corresponding with. But in this case, the identity actually matters less than the incredible specifics of the vision.
Okay, so let's list what Seth sees. He's fighting this interference, but he gets really granular.
Incredibly so.
First, he sees 4 men at a table. Second, there's a large coffee urn nearby. Third, there are papers on the table, and he specifically notes there is no tablecloth.
And fourth.
Straight back chairs.
Okay, so why do you think he mentions those details? The lack of a tablecloth or the type of chairs? Seems so random.
I was wondering that myself. It feels like such a mundane thing to pull through the veil.
Well, think about how remote viewing might work, especially if you're trying to see through static or noise. You're probably going to pick up on high contrast shapes first. The sharp, dark line of a table edge against a lighter floor, the metallic reflection of a coffee urn, the strong, vertical lines of straight-back chairs. These are geometric anchors in the scene.
So he's describing the structure of the scene first, because the more subtle details, like textures or colors, might be lost in the noise.
That's my theory. He's grabbing what he can, and he also picks up on the people. He says one man may be bald in the center of his head, another might have a mustache, or at least he's not cleanly shaven.
And he also gets a feeling, right? He mentions a clash of dates or some kind of indecision happening at the table.
So he's getting both the visuals and the mental atmosphere. Even with this insulation, the focus is working. But for me, the most interesting part of this whole experiment isn't even about Dr. Instream.
It's about Jane.
It's about Jane's reaction to it. Rob makes a very specific point in his notes to describe Jane's psychological state while she's delivering this.
Right.
In the past, Jane was a bit of a perfectionist. If she got an image that was fuzzy or if she felt like she might be guessing, she would clam up.
Performance anxiety.
Total performance anxiety. She would block the channel because she was so afraid of being wrong.
But not here. Something's different.
Something has changed. Rob says she is dissociated from it. She sees the figures as hazy, which makes sense given the bad connection, but she just speaks anyway. Rob writes in his notes, if she is wrong once, perhaps she'll do better the next time.
That is a monumental shift for her. She's adopting a relaxed vibes approach to channeling.
It connects right back to the dream state discussion we had earlier. In a dream, do you stop and analyze if the flying pink elephant makes logical sense?
No, you just go with it.
You just flow with it. Jane is learning to bring that same dreamlike acceptance into her waking work. She's realizing that tension and trying too hard actually constricts the channel. Relaxation opens it.
She's learning to trust the focus, even when the picture on the screen is blurry.
And that is such a lesson for anyone trying to access their own intuition. The fear of being wrong is the single biggest block there is. The moment you start to judge the data, you stop the flow. Jane just let it rip.
Seth wraps up the session pretty quickly after that. He gives a couple more little verification objects for them to check on later. A box of clippings in a drawer, an unusually shaped paperweight.
And then he signs off. We will now close a very brief session.
It was brief, but the weirdness was not over.
Not by a long shot.
No, the weirdness was just getting started. This is the part of the notes that really stuck with me. It happens 2 nights later, on August 6th.
The aftermath.
So, let's set the scene again. It's 2:30 in the morning. It's still brutally hot. Rob is in bed, trying to sleep. But, and this is a universal annoyance we can all relate to, the neighbors are in their backyard having a really loud conversation.
Oh, there's nothing worse than that when you're just trying to sleep.
So Rob is just lying there. He's drifting in that space between being awake and being asleep, you know, the hypnagogic state. And suddenly he starts to feel, well, very strange.
He describes a sensation of physical expansion.
Yeah, he says his body felt like it was enlarging, but not just, you know, getting a little bigger. He gets incredibly specific. He says his chest felt like it was a yard wide.
3 feet.
3 feet of chest. Can you even imagine that?
And what about his arms?
He says his upper arms felt as thick as his thighs, and his hands, he says his hands felt huge and heavy, comparable to baseball gloves.
Baseball gloves. That is such a specific tactile image.
And then he adds this final detail, which is the weirdest one for me. My fingers felt united into a paw-like or club-like unit.
A paw.
A paw. Okay, let's just pause here. If I woke up at 2:30 in the morning and felt like my hands had turned into giant club-like paws, I would be screaming. I would lose my mind with terror.
That would be the completely normal reaction, yes.
Yeah.
But what did Rob do?
He says, and I quote, "The sensation was very pleasant and not at all frightening."
It's not frightening.
He actually tried to encourage it. He just lay there and let it happen.
And this is crucial. This brings us full circle all the way back to the focus theory that Seth laid out at the very beginning of the session.
Okay, connect the dots for me. How so?
Rob was in that twilight state. His safety lock on physical reality was loosening up. His consciousness was, without him even trying, performing a depth change. He was shifting his focus away from the standard physical construction of Rob's body, and he was tuning into, well, something else.
Seth often talks about the inner body or the energy body. Is that what this could be?
It's very likely. The inner self, or the energy form, doesn't have the same strict, bony dimensions as the physical skeleton. It's often described as feeling larger, more powerful, less differentiated.
So the paw sensation.
The paw sensation might be Rob perceiving the single unified energy field of his hand rather than the 5 separate physical fingers.
So because he was relaxed, because he didn't panic and slam on the brakes, he was able to just experience this other dimension of himself.
Yes. Think about it. If he had panicked, what would have happened instantly?
He would have snapped wide awake. Adrenaline would have flooded his system.
The flashlight would have swung instantly back to the physical world to check for threats. Are my hands okay? What's happening? And the sensation would have vanished. Fear is the anchor that holds us in physical reality.
By staying calm, Rob allowed the anchor to lift a little.
He did. It really validates that whole relaxed vibes theme of the entire episode. Jane had to relax to get the remote viewing message through the static. Rob had to relax to feel the paw.
It seems like effort, intention, and trying too hard are actually the enemies of this kind of experience.
That is the great paradox, isn't it? We're taught our whole lives to try hard, to focus, to concentrate. But in consciousness work, trying often just creates resistance. You have to soften the focus, not tighten it.
It's just fascinating that Seth lays out the theory of changing focus at the start of the session, and then Rob spontaneously has this profound physical experience of it just 2 days later. It's like Seth gave the lecture, and then Rob had the practical lab exam.
It shows that the material isn't just abstract philosophy. It's a user manual. It's mechanics. Seth describes the mechanism, and then Rob, maybe unconsciously, takes the car for a test drive.
So let's try to synthesize all this. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
We've got the core theory. We are not our bodies. We are the consciousness that is pointing the camera. We've got the disruption, this idea of psychic weather that can make us tired and irritable and even make babies cry.
And we have the application.
The application. The ability to shift that focus, either intentionally like Jane, to see remotely, or spontaneously like Rob, to even feel our own bodies in completely different ways.
It really paints a picture of a world that is much more fluid and,
Yeah.
well, strange than we usually give it credit for. We think of reality as being solid, like concrete.
Right.
But Session 175 suggests that reality is much more like water. It changes shape depending on how you look at it. And it has these invisible currents, the psychic weather, that can push us around if we aren't paying attention.
Currents is the perfect word. I am definitely going to pay more attention to the weather inside my own head after digging into this.
Absolutely. Me too.
Now, we have gone into a lot of detail here, but I have to say it. We are just scratching the surface. This is one session, one night in 1965. There are volumes and volumes of this material.
And there's a certain texture to the original transcripts that we just can't replicate in a conversation. The exact rhythm of Seth's speech, the small back and forths between Jane and Rob, the detailed notes Rob takes on the environment, it all creates a much fuller picture.
So we really strongly recommend that you go to the source. Don't just take our word for it. This whole deep dive was based on session 175 of the early sessions, book 4.
And you can get that book and all the others directly from the New Awareness Network. Their website, one more time, is sethsetter.com for /these sessions.
Go visit their bookstore. You'll be supporting the preservation of this incredible material. It's just an amazing archive of human potential.
And frankly, it's a fantastic read. Rob's notes alone are worth the price of admission.
Okay.
He was such a careful, skeptical, and brilliant observer.
He really was. So before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final thought, a little experiment you can try for yourself this week.
Okay, what have you got?
We talked about the psychic weather, this idea that a low-pressure front of consciousness can roll through your town, affecting the plants, the babies, and you.
Right.
So the next time you feel a sudden, unexplained shift in your mood, maybe a wave of exhaustion just hits you out of nowhere, or you feel suddenly irritable for no reason or just heavy.
Don't just accept it.
Don't just accept it as, oh, I'm tired or I'm in a bad mood. Stop and ask yourself a question.
Is this me?
Is this me? Or is this the weather? Am I the one generating this feeling, or am I just picking up on the static in the neighborhood? And if you decide it is just the weather, remember that you have a dial. You don't have to stay tuned to the static channel.
Exactly. You can always change the focus. You can always move the flashlight.
Keep focusing.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.